What's up, guys? It's that time of year again, and I've got a lot of people asking me how I personally make ribs. So, when I do competitions, I make my own dry rub. I take a lot of steps that really aren't necessary when you're cooking at home for your friends and your family. So, I went to Walmart, picked up pre-done dry rubs that you can get yourself, and I decided to shoot a little video right here and show you guys how to do it. Today we're going to be working with the St. Louis cut of the spare rib. You can get them pre-cut like this or purchase a full rack of spare ribs and trim them down yourself. But unless you're doing a competition, this is a much easier way, just getting them pre-done. Either way, you're going to have to do a little bit of trimming and definitely get rid of that membrane on the back. The first thing we're going to do once we're all trimmed up and ready to go is choose a dry rub and a binder to help that dry rub stick to our ribs. Normally I'll make my own dry rub, and a lot of people choose mustard as a binder, but today we're going to use McCormick Grill Mates Sweet and Smoky Rub and McCormick Grill Mates Brazilian Steakhouse Seasoning. I chose these two because they're super easy to find at any Walmart or supermarket, so you can recreate this yourself. Now I used olive oil and Cholula hot sauce as a binder today to help these dry rubs stick. And what you're really looking for is this wet look that the rub gets. And that's how you know it's been sitting long enough that it's really stuck to the meat, so you can go ahead and flip it over and do the other side. I like to start with the bottom of the rack first and then the top just for presentation purposes, but you can do it however you want. And you don't have to let these sit overnight. I like to start my smoker up and let it preheat and then do this to my ribs. So once my temperature is up on my smoker and ready to go, my ribs are ready to go. We got our smoker set up for indirect cooking. Our fire's over there where our smoke's coming out. We put the thicker side of the ribs towards the flame, and the smoke's going to drag along the top over to this end and then out. I've also got my probe right here to tell me the temperature of the cooking surface. So let's get started. We're going to let those guys sit and cook between 250 and 275 for a good 2 to 3 hours, and then we'll be able to check on them and see what's up. So a lot of people have been asking me about marinating the ribs overnight or even boiling them. You don't need to do that. As long as you have a pretty good idea of how to keep an even temperature on your smoker, if you got a pellet grill. I mean, you could even do these in the oven if you really wanted to. You're not going to get that smoke flavor, but they'll still cook properly. I would still keep it around 250 to 275. And give yourself a couple hours to get these done. The ribs are done when they say they're done, not when you need them to be done. So if you go by that, you're going to get that tender, almost fall off the bone rib that you can bite through cleanly without the whole thing coming off, and that's what we're shooting for. Alright, so we're at about 2 hours into this cook, and what we're looking for really is a color on the ribs more than anything else. And, you know, it's a nice looking, almost mahogany color. I think we're alright. I don't usually go by temperature when I'm cooking ribs, but I do use the probe for tenderness, and as you can see, there's definitely some resistance there. And we're at about 143 right now, so I'd say these are alright to wrap up in some foil, and I'll show you a nice technique with that. And we're going to leave the Brazilian rack right now and just let that one keep going. So we're going to take some heavy duty aluminum foil, and we're going to throw down some brown sugar right along in a line as the ribs would lay on the foil, because we're going to put them face down. And then we're going to throw in some butter, same thing in that line. And then what we're going to end up doing is we're going to add a little bit of barbecue sauce just to retain the moisture in the ribs. It's not to sauce them, but just to keep them moist while they're cooking. So we've got some Sweet Baby Ray's, which is a good alternative if you're not making your own sauce. And we're just going to put a little bit in a line here to go along the ribs. Again, not to sauce them, but just to keep them moist while they're in here. So we're going to take our rack. This is our barbecue rack, and we're going to lay it face down, bones up, into the sauce. And we're going to wrap this up nice and tight. We're going to take the foil and we're going to pinch it in the center, and roll it down as tight as we can get it. And then we'll fold the sides up and make sure that there's no real room for air, because we don't want to steam our ribs. We want them to, keep cooking and retain that moisture. And a lot of times if there's a bone sticking out like that, you're going to get a rip. So we're going to just get another piece of foil and we're going to double wrap these, which is perfectly fine. And like I said, you want to make sure it's nice and tight. There's no extra space in there for steam, because you don't want to steam your ribs. You want them to keep cooking in their own juices. So we're going to put these back in, bone up, and we'll check on them in a bit. All right, it's been about an hour. Let's take a look at these barbecue ribs and see where we're at. A lot of juice in here. Look at this. Wow. So the Brazilian rack, the bones are starting to pull back from the meat a little bit. But wow, yeah, there's so much moisture in this foil just from that little bit of butter and brown sugar and that touch of barbecue sauce that we put in there. Oh man, I can tell already these are super tender. You see the bones are pulling away from the meat real nice on this rack. And now this is upside down, but if we pick it up from the center, this is a good way to tell. Pick it up from the center, look at this, and both ends are still touching the grill grates. That's how you know these are tender and they're ready to come off. Yeah, wow. Right side up, you can see that the meat's starting to break in the middle a little bit. And let's take a look at this Brazilian rack here. Yeah, these are they're not quite where we want them to be yet. So these are definitely going to need some more time to cook. All right, so we got a couple options at this point. We can either sauce our ribs, we can add some dry rub for an extra layer of flavor, or we can put them on direct heat and sear them and get some grill marks. So we're gonna sauce this barbecue rack right here, and then we're gonna sear the Brazilian rack, but I wanna let them cook a little bit more before we do that. So we're gonna take some of our favorite barbecue sauce, there we go, and we're just gonna do a nice line across the rack. Doesn't have to be too much, we're not slathering them. We're just going to get a nice even thin coat, nice silicone brush. Hey, there we go. And we're just going to paint our ribs. Happy little ribs. A nice thin even layer, as even as you can get it across the rack. And once that heats up, that's going to get nice and tacky. It'll give you a nice little glaze on those ribs, and they will be sticky and sweet and delicious. And of course, we make our own sauce when we do competitions, but when you're in a bind, Sweet Baby Ray's is always a good go-to. Now, what I like to do for competitions is I'll take my barbecue sauce and dilute it a little bit with either apple juice, apple cider vinegar, some kind of fruit juice, and then heat it up before putting it onto the ribs. And what that does is it thins it out a little bit and it allows you to apply it to the ribs without leaving those brush strokes that we just saw earlier. It's not necessary, but it's going to leave you with a amazing glazed finished product. If you're trying to impress somebody, it's really a good, easy way to go above and beyond. You don't necessarily have to if you're just cooking for family and friends, but it's a nice little trick to, kind of show off a little bit. And just like that, we have a perfectly glazed rack of ribs. Yeah, oh wow, these are super tender. Yep, both ends are staying down on the grate. These are definitely ready to come off. Wow, yeah, they're so tender they just broke. Look at that. All right, and we're gonna do the sear now on these Brazilian ribs. We just took some already lit charcoal from our firebox, threw it under the grate, and we're gonna close this grill up and let those grates heat so we can get some nice sear marks on our ribs. So we'll just take our rack and throw it meat down onto the charcoal, and we'll close it up. So these barbecue ribs have rested for a little bit. Let's flip them over so we can see the bones, and let's cut into them. Let's see what we got here. All right. This would probably be a little easier if I was using two hands and not holding a camera. Let's see, what do we got? Yeah, some nice smoke ring here. These are looking pretty good. Let's see if we can cut a whole one out here. Let's see. These smell amazing. I cannot wait to try these. All right. Yeah, nice smoke ring. These are super tender and juicy. Oh, look at all that juice. Oh yeah, this is what we want. A nice, clean bite. The rest of the meat stays on the bone. That's exactly what we're looking for. These taste so good. I can't wait to try the other ones. Alright, let's take a look at our friends here. These are coming along nicely. I'm just going to take them and rotate them on the grates for some even cooking over these coals and give them a little bit more time. Alright, yeah, look at that. A nice crispy crust that we have on these ribs now. They're not quite there yet tenderness wise where we want them. So just going to throw them on this top rack here real quick and let them sit for a little while longer. If you want to, you could wrap these in foil at this point as well. That's entirely up to you. And these are looking pretty good. Yeah, see the meat's starting to break a little bit on the top. These are getting nice and tender. I think we're going to call it here. All right, we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to flip these over so you can see the bone. And we're going to cut into these bad boys. All right, here. This is so much easier when you have two hands to cut into your ribs. Again, same deal. You got that nice smoke ring in there. A gorgeous, crispy finish that you can hear. And just look at all the juice in there. Gorgeous. These are not as tender as the other ones, but the crispy crust, that extra smoke time, definitely makes a difference. That Brazilian rub is a little saltier, so it almost has like a bacony taste with the sweetness of the pork and the saltiness. It's definitely a churrasco style barbecue, not what you would normally get down in the South. You know, the sweetness from the barbecue sauce, but it's definitely really good and worth trying. I think I would at one point wrap these, probably around when I wrapped the other ones, but I would definitely sear them off at the end. That was definitely a good trick to get them nice and crispy on the outside and really bring out all that porky flavor. So I hope this helped you guys, gave you some ideas of what to do, what not to do. And always remember, the ribs dictate the cook time, not the clock. If I left these on a little longer, they would get a little more tender and it would get that, you know, clean bite through like the first rack. But it is getting dark here and starting to rain, so we had to cut it. But thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it.